Alice, my dear, we're going to be rich. I have the perfect plan.
Bob whisper shouted, his eyes gleaming with mischief. He had been working on this idea for weeks, and now he was ready to share it.
Rich with indigestion, maybe. You always come up with these wild schemes, Bob.
Alice retorted, raising a skeptical eyebrow. She had heard many of Bob's plans before, and they rarely panned out.
It's a pie, Bob, not a pot of gold. How is a pie going to make us rich?
But not just any pie, Alice. This is the key to our fortune. It's Mrs. Jenkins's award-winning Blueberry Blast, the pie that won first place at the county fair.
Bob exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement. He had seen the potential in that pie, and he was convinced it was their ticket to success.
The one she's been guarding like a hawk ever since that baking competition? You think we can get our hands on it? Yeah, this will go well. I can already see the headlines. Local couple arrested for pie theft.
Despite her skepticism, Alice couldn't help but laugh. Bob's enthusiasm was infectious, and she found herself getting caught up in his excitement.
Trust me, Alice, this pie is our golden ticket. We just need to figure out how to get it.
Alice sighed, but she couldn't deny the thrill of the challenge. Maybe, just maybe, Bob was onto something this time. And so, with a mix of skepticism and excitement, they began to plot their next move.
Trust me, Alice, this is foolproof. We've planned every detail and nothing can go wrong this time. Remember, we've got the element of surprise on our side.
Bob insisted, puffing out his chest with a confidence that seemed almost comical. Alice couldn't help but snort in amusement, her skepticism evident. A montage of Bob's past foolproof plans flashed through her mind, each more ridiculous than the last, she remembered vividly. The time he tried to hotwire what he thought was a car, only to realize it was a toaster. The look on his face was priceless. Then there was the great bank robbery where he dramatically smashed a piggy bank thinking he was pulling off a major heist. And who could forget the infamous diamond heist? He had triumphantly held up a plastic diamond only to find out it was a cubic zirconia from a gumball machine.
Foolproof, you say? Alice raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm.
Alice muttered under her breath, her doubts growing with each passing second. Her face was a mask of disbelief, clearly showing her lack of faith in Bob's latest scheme.
No time for doubt, Alice, Bob shouted with urgency, trying to rally her spirits. We've got a pie to liberate, and we can't afford to hesitate now. His excitement was palpable as he gestured wildly, making a determined statement that left no room for argument.
Bob declared with a confidence that seemed unshakable, as if he truly believed this time would be different. He grabbed Alice's hand and pulled her towards Mrs. Jenkins's house, their mission clear in his mind. They were going to liberate that pie, come what may. As they approached the house, they moved stealthily, peeking through windows and making sure the coast was clear. Alice couldn't shake the nervous feeling in her stomach, but she followed Bob's lead, hoping against hope that this time things would go smoothly. Bob gave her a reassuring thumbs up, his confidence unwavering. He was determined to prove that this plan, unlike the others, was indeed foolproof. They tiptoed into the house, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The pie was within reach, and success seemed just a step away. Finally, they reached the kitchen and saw the pie sitting on the counter. Bob grabbed it triumphantly, and they shared a quiet moment of celebration. Sneaking out of the house with the pie in hand, they felt a wave of relief wash over them. Maybe, just maybe, this plan was foolproof after all. Crouched behind a ridiculously large rosebush, Bob and Alice observed the house.
Okay, so remember the plan?
Bob whispered, his voice a mix of excitement and nerves.
You're going to distract Mrs. Jenkins while I sneak in and grab the pie.
Alice recited with the enthusiasm of a potted plant.
Exactly,
Bob exclaimed a little too loudly.
Now go, go, go.
Alice approached the house cautiously, plastering on a smile that could curdle milk. Mrs. Jenkins opened the door, her expression wary.
Can I help you?
Mrs. Jenkins, you look absolutely radiant today.
Alice gushed, her voice dripping with forced sweetness.
Is that so? And what brings you here?
Meanwhile, Bob tiptoed into the kitchen, his eyes darting around. He was on a mission, a secret mission to indulge in a midnight snack without waking anyone up. The kitchen was dimly lit, the only light coming from the moonlight streaming through the window. Bob's heart raced as he moved stealthily, his footsteps barely making a sound on the cold, tiled floor.
The pie sat on the counter, a beacon of deliciousness. It was a homemade apple pie, the crust golden and flaky, the filling oozing with sweet, spiced apples. Bob's mouth watered at the sight of it. He could almost taste the cinnamon and sugar melting on his tongue. This was the prize he had been dreaming of all evening.
Suddenly, a ginger cat darted out from under the table, causing Bob to jump back in surprise. The cat, named Whiskers, was notorious for causing trouble at the most inconvenient times. Bob's heart skipped a beat as he stumbled backward, trying to regain his balance. Whiskers meowed loudly, as if mocking Bob's clumsiness.
"Whoa, what the?" Bob exclaimed, his voice a mix of shock and frustration. He had been so close to his prize, and now this feline menace had thrown a wrench in his plans. He glared at Whiskers, who simply sat there, licking his paw nonchalantly.
He tripped, his arm flailing wildly. In his attempt to avoid stepping on Whiskers, Bob's foot caught on the edge of the rug, sending him sprawling forward. His arms windmilled in the air as he tried to catch himself, but it was too late. He was going down and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Crash! The cake stand went flying, cupcakes raining down like sugary hail. Bob lay amidst the wreckage, covered in frosting and utterly defeated. The once pristine kitchen was now a disaster zone, with cupcakes scattered everywhere and frosting smeared across the floor and walls. Bob groaned, feeling the sticky mess clinging to his clothes and skin. Oh no, not the cupcakes, he thought, his heart sinking. These were his wife's prized creations, baked for a special occasion. Now they were ruined, and it was all his fault. He could already imagine the look of disappointment on her face when she saw the mess.
"Well, this didn't go as planned," Bob muttered to himself, his voice tinged with regret. He had just wanted a simple midnight snack, but now he was faced with the daunting task of cleaning up this colossal mess. He sighed, knowing that he had no choice but to start picking up the pieces.
And there he was, Bob, defeated by a cat and a kitchen full of cupcakes. Whiskers watched from the counter, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Bob couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. He had been bested by a cat and his own clumsiness. "Meow," Whiskers seemed to say, as if to add insult to injury. Bob shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. Despite the chaos, he couldn't stay mad at Whiskers. After all, it was just another night in the unpredictable world of kitchen chaos.
"I've fallen and I can't get up."
Bob wailed dramatically from his position on the kitchen floor. He picked himself up, only to slip on a stray cupcake and land in a heap again.
"This is a disaster! A delicious, sugary disaster!"
And the kitchen door swung open, revealing a horrified Mrs. Jenkins.
What in the world?
She started to say, her eyes widening as they fell on Bob, covered in frosting and looking utterly guilty.
He wasn't trying to steal your pie, I swear.
Alice blurted out from behind Mrs. Jenkins, her face a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Bob, still covered in frosting, could only offer a sheepish grin. Mrs. Jenkins looked from Bob to Alice and then back to the disaster that was her kitchen. A slow smile spread across her face.
Well, you certainly made a mess of things, but no harm done. How about some pie?
"You mean it?"
Of course. After that performance, you both deserve a treat.
Just then, a portly figure appeared at the open door.
Evening, folks. Everything all right in here? Heard a bit of a commotion.
Officer Dave, a friendly but slightly clueless policeman, surveyed the scene.
Just a minor baking mishap, Officer Dave. Nothing a little pie couldn't fix.
Officer Dave scratched his head, a puzzled expression on his face.
Pie, huh? Well, all right then. You folks have a good night now.